Candace Payne, Commissioner. This is the Compensation Board hearing for June 18th, 2025. We will conduct this meeting according to the regular rules so that it is properly recorded and noticed, and we don't get in trouble with small Nicho's here. I'll get yelled at if I don't do according to this time. Okay, board member introductions. Let's go around the table. Andy, start.
Andy Hunthausen, County Commission.
I'm Roger Baltz, I'm the CAO, but I am not a board member. Here for staff support.
Amy Reeves, Treasurer, Clerk, Recorder.
Nicho on behalf of Kevin Downs. Mike Swingley, Justice of the Peace.
Lisa Kallio, Clerk of District Court. Shauna Helfert, Public Member. Kari, DesRosier, Human Resources, and I'm not a member of the board and here as staff.
Greg Jackson, retired, former county employee and Mako employee.
Tom Rolfe, County Commissioner.
And Mr. John in the back. Oh, we're gonna start over there. Start, Frank.
Cornwell, County Staff, CFO.
Right.
I would stand up, but I have a lot of gear on, and I guess I'm not sure. Andy Hagley, I'm a sergeant with Lewis Clark County Sheriff's Office.
And I'm just Patrick with Lewis Clark County Sheriff's Office Association.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'm not sure if Kari is leading this or if Amy is leading this.
Yep, so I will just hand out the document that we always hand out at the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so before you is a sheet that shows what the current base salary, the agreed upon salary for elected officials from last year's compensation board meeting. As you can see at the top, there's a 2.13 COLA that has been built into the budgets for county employees, and we adjusted the elected official pay by that same amount. So the second column from the left with the numbers on it, as far as under FY26 base, is the adjusted base salary with the 2.13%. The next column is the statutory additions or additions that have been added through resolution over previous years. And then we have the total of those two amounts, the 26 base and the statutory additions. And then the longevity for the upcoming fiscal year for each of the officials, and then the total compensation.
Thank you, Kari. Are there any comments from the commissioners?
Chair Payne.
Mr. Hunthausen.
Kari, thank you. Just for the record, the 2.13 you just mentioned, but that is the COLA recommended and has been anticipated throughout all of the county budgets. So it's the same COLA that every employee would be taking. Elected officials are essentially treated just the same as for this proposal.
Chair Payne, commissioners, yes, that's the COLA number that we use. It's historically the same way we calculate our cost of living adjustment, and it has been built in everybody's budget. The preliminary budget was presented, and so that is the same number. And historically, that's been the process is the same number that's applied to employees is the number that's applied to elected officials.
Thank you.
Sure. I believe that COLA was derived from Western States DPI.
The Mountain West region.
Frank, do you have anything you'd like to add to?
Yeah.
What Kari has told us, stand up so we can
Just
hear
to,
you and see.
yeah, everything Kari was saying is correct, and Commissioner Rolfe as well. It's the Western region CPI. As you know, not all states and regions are the same, and they don't experience inflation. we don't experience inflation is the same as other areas. Our,
Can't hear you.
the way we calculate, this is the way we've done our calculation for our COLA is the Western Region CPI. It's the average for the year of 2024. For next year, it'll be the average of the calendar year 2020. It's something we've been doing. When I go back and I look at our calculations for our COLA, it's been going, it's many, many years. It's over a decade. So it's worked out really well.
Sure thing.
Mr. Baltz, yes.
So, thank you, Frank. You used a couple of acronyms just to be absolutely clear. CPI is Consumer Price Index.
Correct.
I assume everyone in the room may be familiar with it, but it's things like housing, fuel cost of groceries. It's a basket of items that are evaluated, and COLA, the acronym is Cost of Living Adjustment, just for clarity on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Chairman Payne, can I ask another question as well? Shauna Helfert.
Shauna Helfert, yes.
So is this what, I mean, I understand you were looking at the COLA for the Western region. Is this also what Mako did for the rest of the state? Or the rest of the counties were in line with this? Or are we in line with the rest of the counties in Montana?
Yes, I believe that is true, although not everyone. I heard about a county that did not accept COLA was that? Go ahead. Yes.
Answer for that. So, not every county chooses the same CPI number. And, they don't even do the same thing within different, organizations within their own entities. So there are some counties that are doing, higher numbers, 3.5. There's also organizations, county that is doing it 0%. So, and not every county chooses to use that cost of living adjustment.
I appreciate that. Excuse me, that process is, I just want to make sure that we are in line with Montana. Sometimes even though the western states are increasing, Montana sometimes increases more than others. And those other states might be dragging that rate down. So that's what I was just curious to know about.
I am not the number cruncher. So I will ask Miss Amy or possibly our CFO, our financial officer to address that. Amy, either one of you?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind. I'm a treasurer and all the treasurers are sending out emails back and forth and the clerk recorders are too. So I get a lot of them from other counties. There are a few counties that are doing 3% and then they did an additional 3%, I believe, for their elected officials because their elected officials pay with low in that county versus the other counties. There's also talk that some of the counties are doing just like a set dollar rate, either $1 or $1.25 for all employees. So it is very variable that I'm seeing across the board. And the highest percentage rate I saw was 6%. And I did see a few that weren't giving any. So just to give you an idea, and then some are just dollar amounts.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. Andy, did you have something?
Yeah, just to add to that, Chair Payne, I think from a historic perspective, since I've been here, we've tried to follow the CPI and do a COLA every year for our employees, and the effort and treat the elected officials exactly the same as all the other employees, so that we can be fair and equitable with everybody. But in addition to that, there's a strategy behind that, in that trying to keep up with the cost of living the best that we can within the public market, because we have, we're in the state capitol, we compete against the state of Montana for employees, the city of Helena for employees. And so we've been trying to be pretty consistent in our effort to attract and then retain quality employees. And we have a lot of employees that have stuck around for a long time. So that's some of the history. And then I think this time we're close, but a little different than the city of Helena and the state of Montana, but we're pretty close. And I think we're even a little bit more conservative than they are this time, if I'm right.
Chair Payne, Commissioner Hunthausen, the state of Montana is at 2.5%. I'm not sure where the city has landed with their COLA. I think they're going to be 2.5% as well, one of the other. But they usually come out with theirs later than us. many years they copy us because we come out with ours before, and then they take into the same consideration they're competing with us, and COLAs can be expensive. So there's a lot of considerations when you're looking at those COLAs. I would add that these cost of living adjustments are really important because we do market surveys. We try to do them at least every 2 years, sometimes every other year. If you're doing these cost of living adjustments, it really does a good job of keeping those market surveys in line. So when we find out our staff are, we don't get as many recommendations to get staff up to what the market is actually paying those kind of staff at those levels. So when we get those, it really, really does a good job of keeping things smooth. And the fact that we're doing this year in and year out, we don't have a lot of volatility. Gallatin County is one where they've elected to not follow the annual adjustments, and they ended up experiencing a lot of turnover, and they have to do huge cost of living adjustments that are really cost prohibitive to their budgets, where with our approach, it's incremental annual over the year adjustment. It makes it a lot easier to manage financially as opposed to bringing on like a huge cost of living adjustment, market analysis adjustment, doing it all at once for millions of dollars. Us, it's usually we have our COLAs paid for through the mill adjustment or inflationary. So I think the approach that we have taken throughout the years has really protected us from a financial standpoint, and also has helped us maintain staff. And we don't see the volatility of staff leaving as much as our counterparts have seen.
I'd like to make a remark. I'm the newest member of the county commission, and so I've learned a lot. And one of the things I've learned is the importance of the historic knowledge that some of our long-term employees have. And so if I come up with this wild and crazy idea, we should try this, then Tom will say, we tried that once before. This is what happened. And he is worse at it yet because he's been here for 16, 18, a long time. So it is important that we retain our long-term employees. They are the historic knowledge base. Not everything is in your computer. It might be, but it's not. And I'm amazed at how many great employees long-term that we have that stand up and say, I remember when this happened and we shouldn't be. So anyway, on the one hand, I recognize our property taxpayers are kicking on the door saying, no new property taxes, no, we're not going to be paying for this. But our citizens expect good service. They've had it for years, and they are not interested in backing down, having their roads not taken care of, or their the bridges. And all the things that we each do to add to the continuity of our county and the way we serve our taxpayers. I am just amazed at how much service this group of people is able to provide citizens. Mr. Helfert? No, Mr. Jackson. Do you have anything to say? You're on this board, you're a resident taxpayer?
Yeah, being new, I'm just here to kind of figure out what you guys actually do. In fact, I had to look up a compensation limit as far as what the board does. So I'm learning right now, but I don't have anything to say right now. I was administrative officer here.
I thought you might have
for, I don't know, how many years, Andy? 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. And then I went to work. Yeah, he just came on when I left or something like that. But then I worked for Mako then for about 30 years. And I don't have any
oh, you're that Greg Jackson.
yeah, I'm not the attorney.
No, but
I'm the taller looking one. He's
no, that's my husband, David Payne. Now it's out, Nicho.
There used to be three of us in town, but anyway, no, and I just was interested in getting back into working with county governments. I missed it. I've been retired for 7 years. And I don't have anything specific right now as it relates to this. I guess the one question I would have is how is the longevity based on so much per year that you're here? Is that how that's figured?
Karen,
That's correct. So there's a schedule that was adopted, I think it was updated back in 2015 or 16. And it's after the first year, it starts at a certain dollar amount.
Mhm.
And then after year 2, it increases by $500.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Amy,
if you're an elected official, your longevity starts over when you are first put in office.
even if you were a county employee, for example, you
Right.
have worked downstairs for thousands of years, and so have you. But now you were elected, so you had to give up the longevity that was already factored in.
Yes.
Okay, well, you guys must have really wanted those jobs. So when your jobs are hard, remember, you wanted to do this.
And Madam Chair, if we can too, also remind me on the statutory. Yeah, could you remind me on the statutory additions too? What's that one? That highlighted column there.
Okay, and we can ask Kari to address that.
Okay, commissioners, so there are certain statutes under elected official for local governments that stipulate that you add a certain dollar amount for those elected official positions. It's adding $2,000 to most of them. And then through resolution, there was an addition of the equal amount for the clerk of district court and justice of the peace.
Could you say that again? I couldn't hear you. You know who I am.
So there's a statute that adds an additional $2,000 to a lot of the elected official positions. And there was a resolution at some point, I think back in 15 or 16 maybe, that also added the $2,000 additional compensation for the justice of the peace and the clerk of district court.
Why the superintendent of schools is $400.
Yeah, so
why
that
that is.
statute says it's $400 for the superintendent of schools unless they have a master's in some public instruction and then another type of master's. And if that's the case, then they can get an additional up to $2,000 provided by the board of compensation board.
And Madam Chair,
Thank you, Amy.
if I might add, I'm sure you're wondering about the 6,000. Through resolution, the treasurer and the clerk of recorder were combined, and then later the election administrator was combined into those. So that's 2,000 for each position.
Makes sense. Okay, so when you became an elected official, you gave up all the years that you had worked in clerk recorders on. So 27 years of longevity pay. Okay, you gave that up to take on this this wonderful job.
Yes.
Okay.
And then for the, again, Madam Chair, the county attorney then,
Yes.
that's not added because it's probably not in statute. Okay,
Or maybe they don't like lawyers.
maybe not.
Okay. Nicho, would you like to address that? Or do you know?
So the county attorney pay is set differently in statute, so it's not tied to that equal pay of the other elected officials. And so, 15 something years ago, the legislature changed that because they also were looking at all the roles that a county attorney pays. So they said, well, we're going to separate that out. So that's set at the compensation board level by county commissioner, but it's the process done here, but it's outside how the other elected official salaries get set.
A question, Nicho, are these county attorney wages comparative in all the counties, or do they pay more in Louis Clark County than they do in Carter County?
We'll shoot from the hip and then we'll rely on others, but I think it's set with the same concept of how are we remaining competitive, but not necessarily leading the charge. But I think that's how.
Frank, if you got something you wanted to add?
Chair Payne, I think Kari's got some more detail into it, but I would say it's competitive across the state when it comes to the county attorney's role. If Kari,
Kari, would you like to comment, please?
Yes, Chair. Sure. So I've been looking at that over the past few years, and we've been competitive. Now in the last 2 to 3 fiscal years, counties are kind of doing some different things. So I've been, I'll be looking at to make sure we're staying competitive. The state just did an adjustment, a market adjustment for the all of their elected officials, and gave an increase to the district court judges, which is a lot of times where counties are setting their county attorney pay. They're looking at that, so we'll be looking at that closely this year after some of the elected official pay gets finalized to see where we're at for next year.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anything else that we should do? Have any comment, Mr. Swingley?
Chair Payne, one thing I'll point out, maybe some of the people here don't know, is the Justice Court wages are set by a separate state law also. If you look under the local government, county employees and the way their wages are set, you will not find the Justice of the Peace. We have our own code that says that we're to make no more than 90% of the average district judge in our district, and no less than the clerk of court. And so we technically can be set differently. I guarantee you that just 90% of the district judges here is significant. And so we're separate. I think this, putting us here, is absolutely fair, and I would insist on it. But it is different. Similar to the county attorney and what promised.
Always such an interesting meeting. You know, you think about it. It's stuff we only see once a year, and I forgot all that part. And it can't be more.
Can't be less than the clerk
Can't
of
be
court.
less than the clerk of court.
And no more than 90% of the average district judge salary in the district. We're in district number 1. So if you took all 4 of the district judges here and average their salary, I could make up to 90% of that.
Okay.
No less than clerk of court. It's an odd, I don't know why it was set that way by law, but it's a very old law.
And that's the law. So
Yes.
we'll follow it. And
Just informational only.
somebody doesn't like it.
No, I
Talk to the legislature. Don't talk to us.
part of my point is if we followed it, the number of justice peace would be significantly more than this. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Oh,
But
that's what.
as I said, I think this is the more fair way to pay the salary of the justice of the peace, and I think it more than compensates. I would not want to be outside what the other county elected officials are making, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, do we have, you have something? No. We're indicating.
Good.
Tom, anything?
Nope.
Heard, you guys are not on the board, so you're part of the public, and you get your chance at the very end, according to our rules. Okay, is there anything else that we need to discuss?
Just the recommendation for
Andy Hunthausen,
for
please.
next year. Because we used to do this for some reason. I'm pointing at Nicho because, but because the board changes and we get new people here and there, and we only do it once a year. Maybe at the beginning, kind of what is the compensation board? What is our role? Why do we exist? What do we intend to do here?
We were gonna have cookies. That's the only reason I came.
So that'd be good. So I remember we used to do, I think, Leo Gallagher used to come and kind of give here's the origins of the compensation board and why it exists and but no one gave any fair warning. I don't think Kevin's done it either, but just to note, if everybody agrees, that I think that would be, because we might have different public members on there too and stuff, so, or different elected officials. Also, this meeting is recorded and our taxpayers can listen and look at it. So I think that's a really good idea. Ms. Helfert, what would you?
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, what I'd also recommend going further than that as well, is perhaps even have these statutory, copies of the statute, so we know what it actually says and what we actually have the authority to do. If this is the base salary by statute, then having that knowledge, I think, is in writing, I think is a lot better for us to understand that. So
For next year, we can put that on the list of how we can serve our taxpayers more clearly. Maybe not better, but certainly more clearly, so they know what they're getting. Amy,
Chair
comments?
Commissioner said to say that I appreciate the 2.13% considering, because I have a lot of clerk one positions and staff that promoted people. We've mentioned how it's a great, last summer we lost 4 of our employees right at the beginning of summer, and it took us all summer long to hire them. So we had the huge lines, and it really did affect our quality of customer service that we could give our citizens. And it is nice to be able to offer those employees a raise so that we can keep them longer term instead of losing them to competitors. And it's gonna
thank you, Amy. Very important comment. Tom, did you want to pick anything?
This is, I guess, the 4th time I've sat in on it, and it's interesting. I came from the private sector, and things weren't in statutes. You just made what you made. So I think this is a fair way to do it. I really do.
Similarly, I came from the private sector, and sometimes people didn't pay their bills, and when people didn't pay their bills, we still had to pay the help, which meant, let's see, I've got money put away from my children's college education. I bet I could dig it, and we would have to come up with $5,000 or $10,000 to pay heat and lights and staff. So, this is a great. This is not as scary as being in private practice. And I think a lot of work and thought has gone into this to make it as fair as possible, while recognizing we have to pay everyone enough so they stay here. They don't want to leave us once we've got them all trained up. And I think your idea about having the statutes available to look at when it says with statutory conditions, I think that would be helpful. So, are there any other helpful suggestions that we can do this better next year? Seeing none, is there any name for a motion?
No, I think
Or, you have a comment?
no problem.
I have public comment. Okay, we can do it that way. I was going through a motion first and then public comment. Time for public comment. Speak or forever hold your peace.
Madam Chair, my name is Andy Hagley again. I'm a,
Spell your last name.
it's HAEGELE. A lot of L's, like my ancestors, sorry. So the sheriff was not able to be here today. He is in Billings at a conference. So I asked if he wanted me to attend on his behalf. So he had a couple things he wanted to pass along. One of the big things is we've been doing a lot of market analysis as well with our office, with our association. The 2.1%, or is it that you guys were discussing? 2.13. I understand that's pretty average across the state. However, our county is no longer in the average. We are currently the 3rd most expensive county in the state of Montana.
Excuse me, 3rd most expensive for
Cost of living. We are behind Gallatin County's #1, Missoula County's #2, and we're #3. So one of the issues we're starting to see on our end is we are not even close to being average anymore for the deputies. The county did do a market analysis recently of positions. Sworn law enforcement officers were not included in that market analysis. We did do an analysis. I have a spreadsheet that I provided really early this morning. I apologize for the lateness of that. I've been working on graveyard shifts, so it's been hard. I do have copies of the sheriff's specific wages, if anyone would like a copy of that. For those, I went through and pulled up resolutions and contacted a couple of payroll places around the state. So if you look at the averages without going into longevity or cost of living adjustments, the sheriff is currently about $10,000 a year behind average. If you go into longevity, he's even farther behind.
I'm sorry.
Or sorry, other way around. So with longevity, he's only about $10,000 behind average for sheriffs across the state. If you remove his longevity, he's closer to $25,000 a year behind average. Biggest competitor, obviously, is the Helena Police Department because they're local. It's the easiest way to compare our two agencies because we have theoretically the same cost of living, theoretically the same tax base. And the chief of police is now making $130,000 per year. Sheriff Dutton's base wage is, with everyone else, $91,000. So that puts him way below average, or way below our closest competitor.
One more, please. Okay, so Sheriff Dutton makes 120,000. That's his total.
With longevity.
Well, and so the 130 for the Helena Police Department does not include longevity?
No.
So how much is he?
I don't know his overall wage, but that's what they said that his last year, because they just updated and increased pay for their entire department.
Okay.
Just that.
Oh, wait a second. We've got to do this according to the rule. Oh, I get the problem. Are you finished with your?
I have some more. I have some more to discuss on it.
You can talk after he does, but we got to kind of so it's orderly.
So a couple of big things with that. The sheriff does not receive pay as the coroner. So he has the dual role of being the sheriff and the coroner. The coroner was previously an elected position held by Mickey Nelson until he died. And we absorbed all of those responsibilities into our office. He is not currently being compensated for that at all. And then it does have an effect. I understand that the sheriff is a little different when it comes to his compensation and his pay, because by statute, all of these sworn officers are also tied in with that. So the benefit of increasing his pay is that it does benefit more employees. We are currently seeing an issue where we are lacking on how many people are actually applying for us versus the city of Helena. We have issues with not necessarily the quality of our people applying, but this last time we had a hiring cycle, we were only able to produce 4 people that we thought were even decently qualified for those positions of deputies. We actually just lost another employee that is a sworn officer this week. So we are back again to having open positions and needing to fill those. And unfortunately, we're just not competitive right now in terms of our wages. Increasing our wages, I think, would help that. It would potentially draw better applicants. For instance, with the pay, if I went to the city of Helena right now and got the exact position I'm getting, I would be an additional $10 an hour than I'm making now with what I'm doing. It's pricing us out. They're able to provide a much better cost of living for their people. We can't even get people to find houses or rentals in Helena right now. They're having to look out of county to be able to afford to live within our community because of how expensive it's getting. Since 2020, housing has almost doubled in Lewis and Clark County. Average home rates, my house we built in 2013 for $252,000. It is now valued at about $600,000. I could not live in the house that I have right now if I had to buy a new house. There's no way, not on the wages that we make.
But that's true for all of us. We all live in this. So I'm going to back you off on that argument because, yeah, so the people who work for the Helena Police Department have a similar problem. They can't, maybe they live with their mother. I don't know. Sorry to interrupt.
I will say with that though,
Continue, please,
Yeah.
Officer Hagel.
they are making significantly more money than we are, so they are able to afford to live here. So that is part of the problem, is they are able to do that, we can't. So I think it's time to look at potentially increasing the sheriff's wages, his base wages, so that it can make everyone in our office a little more competitive in terms of job applications and continue to provide a quality service to our community for emergency services.
Thank you. Your turn.
Excellent. Appreciate y'all letting us come chat again. My name is Jess Patrick. I'm in association with the Sheriff's Office as well. Andy did a great job of kind of providing an overall synopsis. I just want to.
When you say you're in association with.
I'm a detective with the Sheriff's Office.
Oh.
But I'm here as a part of the
I
association.
recognize what a detective is. I didn't know what an.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to provide a little bit more background on how we came up with our numbers. So first, I just want to clarify and make sure everybody understands. Our deputies are not paid off of 120,000. By law, we are paid off the 91,000. So we are paid off a percentage of 91,000. Our sheriff is making significantly more money that doesn't account for us at all. So I just want to make sure that was clear. 120,000 does not apply to us.
We understand that.
Okay.
That has to do with because Leo's been here since.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
He needs to finish his statement before I continue. Okay.
And so what we did is we subscribed to Economic Research Institute. So that's where we got our cost of living numbers that Sergeant Higley referenced. That's their whole business is analyzing various areas for cost of living. So we worked with that company. We know other agencies who worked with that company. That's how we got on with them. Again, their name is Economic Research Institute. Everybody wants to look them up. And so basically we discovered again that we are number 3 in the state for highest cost of living. So we are rapidly growing in Helena. We are not keeping up with wages compared to other counties. As my partner here mentioned, we are $8 to $10 an hour in our upper rank for corporals and sergeants compared to city. Our sister agency here, that's huge. When you compare it to the average of other just counties, so sheriff's offices, not cities, because a lot of people like to just compare apples to apples. We're averaging, and this is, I don't have the full spreadsheet in front of me. What we did, we created benchmarks throughout a career and for ranks. The average, I'm going to give you right now for just simplicity here, is $3 an hour that your average deputy is behind the average. And again, we're not asking to be the most paid. We're asking to be average. But that also does not include, that I want to throw out here that everybody's aware of, it does not include fringe benefits.
I'm sorry, what?
Does not include fringe benefits.
Oh.
So that's what we're just behind in the dollar an hour rate. When you look at places like Missoula, they have extraordinary fringe benefits that add onto their dollar an hour rate.
Missoula.
Right. I mean, right now I could go to Cascade County as a 4-year, as a detective in our office here. I could go to Cascade County right now and get a pay raise. That's a new deputy there. And it's 9% cheaper cost of living in Cascade County. So I'm just trying to share some numbers. No matter how you skin it, we spent probably 30, 40 hours between me and Andy here combing contracts, working with economic research, building out these contracts, figure out, we don't want to come and say, here's just a dumb argument where our numbers don't make sense. We actually have real numbers, real-time contracts, current contracts, and from professional businesses that show we are rapidly falling behind. Lewis and Clark County used to be one of the highest paid. We're now in the bottom percent. So just wanted to share those numbers.
Thank you, Jess.
Yeah.
I'd like to comment, you all have a household budget. And okay, if we're gonna go on a vacation this year, we gotta take money out of the grocery budget. Or so you all, and we recognize how valuable we are. And we've had our community and safety, but we've got to take the money. What does that come out of? Roads, schools, our public health. It's all got to come from someplace because we have X number of dollars. The taxpayers who are paying for this whole thing are not happy. They don't want to pay more taxes. It comes out of their pocket. And so we are charged with making the best of a bad situation. And I hope that you will keep that in mind. This is the hand we're dealt.
Sure. You said it yourself earlier, Madam Chairman. Our people are going to want good services. You know, unfortunately,
And they don't want to pay.
when I'm a guy running into a shots fired call, I like to know the guy beside me is going to have my back. If we don't back and support law enforcement, community and quality personnel, as my partner here mentioned, we can see how underfunded law enforcement is working out in Washington, Oregon, and California. That's a long-term problem. We're not there yet. We don't want to get there, essentially. But
Thank you.
Yep.
Frank, you have any response that might help clarify this?
Chair Payne, thank you. I don't really have a lot more to add. I mean,
It's the truth. They're not, these guys didn't lie to us.
I'm
But I might point out, coroner Leo knew, I mean, that was part of the job when he ran for sheriff. So he should not be surprised that that's part of what his responsibilities. Are you paid extra because you are the clerk and recorder? Is that part of your wage calculation?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, so I have 7 titles. The 3 that you see here are the ones I'm compensated for.
Okay, and what are the other 4?
I'm the local registrar, so when they divided Mickey's position, and part of it may have happened a little earlier.
The Mickey coroner? Is
The
that
coroner,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
The county attorney took over the estate administrator. At one point, a little bit later, I believe, the coroner and the register got split up, and so my position took on the local registrar, and the sheriff's position took on the coroner.
Okay,
So I'm not compensated for that part either.
okay.
And then I just have a couple other titles that are kind of built.
And Nicho, is the county attorney's office compensated because the county attorney is not state
Estate administrator.
estate
Yeah,
administrator?
so it's the public administrator.
Okay,
Is
and-
what that role is, but no, there isn't an additional salary compensation included in that.
So it isn't like we're being mean to Leo.
I'm going to respond this way really quickly. So one thing, as we're talking about taxes, right? It's like the county's only gets what it, in terms of assessment, and everyone jumped in, I'm speaking 50,000 foot. You get what we got last year, plus what is it, your 3% over an amortized thing, plus any new bill. So not asking for anything new. When the Board of County Commissioners voted to consolidate the offices of sheriff and coroner, the statutes call out that a single salary shall be set for those consolidated offices. So that's how the statutory scheme works when you consolidate office. Legislature over time has added additions to carve out to various other elected officials. So you see when you even have consolidated offices, some of those offices for the sheriff's office, the legislature's also carved out that the Board of County Commissioners can change the salary of a sheriff outside of that uniform set base. That calculation still goes, I'm going to call it like a trickle down calculation. So all of that still gets captured into deputy pay, which is what I think these gentlemen were referring to and talking about. But yeah, I think that's all I've had.
And I think we can head off a lot of confrontation and bad feelings if everybody kind of understands that we're all in this together. We're trying to solve a problem, and we've got just, okay, you know, here's our bank account. That's what's in it. We've got to split it up, and we're trying to do the best we can. I don't think anybody here has seen any favoritism, except Andy, of course. But you know, basically, well,
Sure, I'd like
They're all
I'd like to
clean.
ask a question.
who are you asking? Kari?
Kari, yeah, I see on the longevity column that the sheriff's longevity is much higher. Can you explain that?
So the sheriff's longevity is calculated based on the statute for sworn officers and the years of service that he has.
So it depends on how many years he's been a sworn officer. Is that
Yes.
not based on when he became sheriff?
Correct.
And how many that question, and how many how many other members of the sheriff's office would have their wages affected because of the law that required any sheriff's office?
I believe there's 55 positions right now that are under the sworn category that are tied to the sheriff's.
So. In. And
So just for explanation purposes, I think for those board members that haven't been here every year or probably some of the comments you've heard, all of the elected officials or the majority of elected officials have very similar same base salary. And so we're trying to be equitable that way amongst all of them. So though we could, it sounds like if we Board of County Commissioners wanted to give a raise to the sheriff, for example, that could happen, but that has massive impacts. And you just alluded to that, I think, Ash, and that is that if we raise the sheriff's salary by $4,000 or $5,000, for example, that has that trickle down effect, which equates to $700 or more $1,000. Am I right? And we did some sort of calculation, I think, about what the impact might be if we were to raise the sheriff's salary.
Grant, no? It's just.
I think
Kari.
Kari.
Okay.
So, Chair Payne, Commissioners, that's correct. We are in the process of negotiating wages right now. So we're looking at a lot of different things, and that would be the approximate impact on.
Yeah, and so you can look at that from a exponentially factored number. If you went up to $25,000 or something like that, it impacts the county beyond, from at least one commissioner's perspective, beyond what we can sustain, beyond what growth or what our increase in our minor increase in taxes each year, that cost of living tax would allow us to do. And I think in our estimation that anything that the sheriff makes is tied to that tail, which would be impacted those other 55 positions. And so we have to be cautious of that and considerate of that. But I think in addition to that, in trying to compensate the sheriff in relation to the other elected officials in our county, we've tried to be equitable and fair and look at all of us in the same pool and try to treat everyone with respect that way. And in addition, then we have those that have been around a long time get compensated for that as well, for their longevity. So from my perspective, we're being as fair as we can. And I think, Kari, you mentioned that for negotiations, but we also look at over time, we look at other like entities and try to I think understand where we are in that range of salaries. Is that correct as well?
So last year we did our salary survey for the second year in a row. And that was for, some benchmark positions across the county. This year we will have some time to focus on elected official and sworn officer, non-sworn officer pay.
Thank you.
Kari, aren't our deputies and our law enforcement folks subject to a collective bargaining that deals with what they get paid, or maybe that isn't part of it?
Sure, that's correct. Yes,
They are. So if that works that way, if we give Sheriff Dutton a raise and that gives all the people in the union a raise, what does that do to the collective bargaining? I mean, does that throw it off, or how? It seems kind of tied together.
Okay.
This effective capital seems to have.
And you want to go first, Kari? Because
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to mention again, Jess Patrick, it's convoluted the way sheriff's offices work. Cities are much easier as far as how they do their negotiations. Because of Montana code, we are tied to our sheriff's pay. What we can negotiate, to my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong here, Kari, within our negotiations is the percentage of his pay that we get. But if we want to, if his pay goes up, our percentage obviously goes with it. So it is convoluted. Both sides matter. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Gary, do you have anything else you want to add? Okay, well,
Ms. Silver, you want, yep, please go. Yep.
excuse me,
So I know
you are head of this meeting, and I've got to keep this under control because people like you will jump on the table on threat. Miss, we should speak. You are a member of this.
Madam Chair, thank you for recognizing me. Appreciate it. A couple questions and comments that I have as to what I understand. I appreciate the folks from the sheriff office sharing this information. It's not necessary. I mean, although the sheriff is behind pay, what I understood is that we're really concerned about the deputies' pay. So, I mean, that's what I took from your guys' conversation here.
Their deputies, of course, they're concerned about it.
Yeah, well, and especially if we are significantly further behind than any other county, that really troubles me as a citizen of our county. To what the gentleman over here said is that, you know, we try and keep pace and we don't want to get behind. If we get further behind, then it causes us more problems down the road, just like you mentioned about the Gallatin County, right? And so that causes me some concerns. And so my question really is that what I understand and now I think is true is that the longevity, or sorry, the base pay of the sheriff determines the base pay of a deputy. Is that correct? And what is that? I mean, how is it a percentage?
Nicho.
yes, yeah. So it's base pay and the statutes, which, and again, just for everyone's awareness, definitely hear you, Commissioner, about for next year having a presentation from our office, kind of explaining this and getting to those questions. So you have the sheriff's pay.
I'm not sure we need a presentation, we just need it in writing so we can tell what statutes we're talking about.
And so, yep, and we can work on that. There's a whole code about that. So, you know, this would become 12 pages to do all the explanations, and especially based on your question. So you have the sheriff's base pay, and then statutorily, there's all of these other additional add-ons. So all of that then get captured into what the calculation, I'll call like the trickle down calculation. So there's the exception to that is just the longevity. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
I think we're I'm
Gary,
bit
we
more
can
information.
respond.
Yes, so it also in statute, depending on the size of the county, the population, it gives a range of what the sworn deputies fall within as far as they're tied to the sheriff's pay. So based on our county size, we have to be anywhere from 72 to 98%. And all the ranks in between there have to fit within those percentages. So that's depending on your rank, and that's what percentage. And that discretion is decided by the sheriff as far as the percentages within that range. See, I think, did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely, that did.
Yeah.
Thanks. So the sheriff works with the union and negotiations to determine what between 72 and 98% of his salary. So if we increased his salary by $10,000, just say his statute or his base, then that gives him more room to change. This is a trickle down effect that allows him to change those rates of the deputies.
Gary, would you give a verbal answer for
Yes, that's correct.
recording?
Anytime you change his pay, their percent of that amount changes, so increases theirs.
I think to the difference
Down Nicho, which would be
that,
Sure,
you know,
respond.
if there was the increase, then you're already changing what your number, like your math changes automatically. So then while there's still, you know, that balance of negotiation within that range, but your numbers are obviously gonna be different, kind of like if there's an increase, then that would be up, and then we're still having that. Even if there's an increase, there would be an immediate effect on pay within that office entirely, outside of any other negotiations or anything like that.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, one last question. Is the actual base, which was the $91,000, $635, that is not set by statute? That is set by the commissioners, or who sets that base?
This
Group? I think. Sure, go ahead.
the compensation board is who sets.
We set that last year.
Based on increase from the year before, but where was it originally started? I mean, every year for the last 8 years, you tell me, or 10 years, that it's increased by the COLA that was given to the rest of the counties, but where did it originally come from?
Gary, do you know?
I actually do not know. It's been, I don't know who set the original base pay.
And does this statutory base pay, sorry, Madam Chair, correlate with other counties' pay for commissioners?
So on average, as far as how they yes, like last year we were, I think on average, either number 2 or number 3 for average elected pay. Now drilling down into individual, like going out and get every sheriff, every justice of the peace, and every district court clerk. I have not done that, and we'll be focusing on that.
Sorry, this is board discussion on. Go ahead, Karen.
I just finished that. I will be looking at that with all of the details after the new fiscal year, and everyone has decided their cost of living adjustment and their elected official pay for the year.
Thank you.
Fair thing.
Right.
Can I just reiterate? Kari said it a couple times. I just want to make sure it's clear. She's currently doing a lot of work, and she's already a lot of work on this. She's already committed to doing reviewing the electeds' salaries. I think it's easy to assume that when it was set originally, there was probably an internal review by somebody like Kari and her staff that did a market analysis, and they came up with a fair an amount. And we're kind of starting to get, she's already mentioned it, or that she's in the beginnings of starting to do that now for next year. We're also now, she's a lot more work. Kari's very busy, so she's doing the negotiations and involved with the negotiations with the sheriffs and the collective bargaining folks. And so this is just so you know, like there's a lot of work being done. This meeting next year is probably going to be a whole lot different, because there's going to be a lot of that discussion as the results of that work is going to be brought to you during that time. I think that it's a little premature right now, getting ahead of ourselves, because Kari's still pulling. She had mentioned the legislators and their salaries affect. They are elected, so that's got to go into announcement, but it hasn't been finalized. There's other counties that still haven't finalized their COLAs. There's all these factors that go into doing this work that Kari's going to do. This is last year. This current year, we were using a market survey. That's over now. This is kind of churn. This is now on her plate. I'm just saying that she's busy. There's a lot going on right now. We might be getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I think it's really important to hear what this board is emphasizing as to what's important to it. So this is going to help inform her and her approach going forward next year. Mine as well. We'll both be involved in this. Kari and her staff, they generally do the market.
Thank you.
Fair Payne, two quick comments.
Yes, go ahead.
Although I sympathize with the sheriff, I would point out that the sheriff and I got elected the same day, and he makes $18,000 more in longevity than I do. I'm not complaining. Secondly, if we're going to compare city offices to similar county offices, municipal court Judge Peterson here makes $20,000 more than both of the JPs do here. My clerks make minimum $2 less per hour than the city court clerks. I think it's a hard comparison. I'm happy with what I make. I understand the issues here, but if we're going to compare the city electeds and their clerks, we're always going to be behind. Second of all, my clerks need the rate. They don't make enough to even contemplate buying a house and can barely pay their rent sometimes. And so I sympathize with the other county agencies and employees. But as you said, we have budgets, county has a budget. And I think we need to apply this fairly across the board to all employees. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
I really appreciate what Judge Swingley just said. I was just going to give a little more history. So when I started, this is my halfway through. Yeah,
But then they make computers then, right?
So I'm halfway through my 19th year now as an elected official. And my understanding, what we did back then is we did compare to the other like counties across the state, and we didn't want to be, we wanted to be at least average, but not the most. And then because of what Judge Swingley's just saying now, we tried to set a salary for all of us. It's like, well, if Judge Swingley was making 20,000 more than me, it's like, hey, I'm elected too by our citizens. Why is he making more than I am? And why is the sheriff making more? So if we do to avoid all of that, we tried to have an average base salary, and then people would be paid on their longevity. Now, one of the reasons the sheriff's longevity is a lot higher is because he got to start it when he first became a sworn officer, and that's what the law says. So that's what we do. The rest of us have been, the day we got elected, that's when our longevity started. And if you hang around a long time, you get a little bit more longevity. But I think what we were trying to do was keep it so that we're all fairly equal from our base pay. And though I would say, and I'm happy to say this now, from watching all of us do our jobs, that not any of us are compensated to the point that I believe we should be. But because we work for the taxpayer and we chose a life of public service, this is where we are. But if we got paid what we are worth, people have been around this long with this much responsibility and the decisions they're making every day and the amount of money that we work with every day. And if you apply that to the private sector, we'd all be making a lot more money with that level of responsibility. But we chose public service. So I think the way we do it in this year, the average or the base salary being $93,635 for all of us that are not implicated somehow by law, I think that's fair. I mean, I've been here 19 years and I'm only making, a few thousand more than the commissioner that just got here. So yeah, I could have a cow about that's not fair. Geez, I have all this experience, but that's not the way it works.
I have a JD.
That's not the way it works, and we do it based on this. I think it's fair. And so if the sheriff were to make 10,000 more than the rest of us, I think we'd have elected officials that probably would raise an eyebrow at that and have trouble with that. And I think we're doing the best we can, looking across the state, again, pointing at Kari now and trying to do surveys and saying, where are we? How do we compare with the other like entities? Are we trying to keep up the best we can with the amount of money we have? If we paid the sheriff $5,000 more, that's $1 million probably to the, or close to that, to the general fund. And I don't know how we would sustain that when, like Judge said, clerks and folks need to be paid. So my opinion in the discussion here is that we're on the right track. We're doing the best we can for all of us, and we chose a life of public service. And so I will, I feel like I'm underpaid as well for the experience I have in that. Anyway.
Okay, I'm going to call this discussion to a close. We've been here an hour. We've all got other things we need to do. I might comment that as an attorney, we would negotiate things, and when everybody was just sort of on the verge of being unhappy, that was probably an equitable agreement. If you got one side that's really happy and the other side not happy, that's not fair. You want everybody sort of sitting there saying, how did I get that far? So I am going to ask for a motion to approve or not I want the motion to be affirmative. So, motion to approve the elected official salaries as presented to us today by our staff. I have a motion.
So I'll move, Commissioner.
Second. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the elected official salaries for Lewis and Clark County as presented by our staff. Is there any more comment, or is this, can we move on with it? All in
I'd like just to have one more point of discussion there before we make the, before we vote on that, Madam Chair. I would appreciate for next year, and I appreciate that you're doing that now, that's probably very timely, but I feel like, and unfortunately, I'm sad that we're so far behind as a county. That bothers me, that the clerks aren't getting paid, the license plate people aren't getting paid in a comparative amount. As the city, I mean, I understand that you said that it's comparing apples to oranges, but really it's the same pool of people that are working for us. And I'm sad that our county, we're not keeping up pace with that. That makes me sad as a taxpayer. I would hope that the county, we can start figuring out some way that we can elevate these pay, because eventually we're going to get what we pay for, and we don't want to be there. I don't want to be in that county that we don't have
and
the resources and the
we'll tell the taxpayers that.
absolutely, as we should.
They just say, hey, we need more money,
As we should. And I also believe that I'm not sure on, I will appreciate next year, looking at the different compensations for, is it right to pay everybody the same base? You know, and Commissioner Hunthausen suggested that that might be the fairest. And I don't know. I mean, I look at, you know, the county attorney obviously has a different skill set and he's getting paid that. And so should we be looking at the superintendent in schools paid different than the clerk of district court, because they are different skill sets? So
we are in the middle of motion here.
and I'm having conversation about, I can have discussion on that. Thank you.
All those in favor of approving the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. And I can adjourn the meeting. You have accomplished what you set out to do. It's
Public comment on anything not on today's agenda. But within the board.
That is what I was thinking the earlier public comment was about. Public comment on anything outside of this board's currently just on the agenda. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Here. I know.
Good luck.
Yeah, okay. So the introduction of the data.
No, I know that.